Canon firmware update issues. Let me see if I can fix this one. What's up, you guys? This is Devin with Century FX Studios TV, back with another video. And today we're going to be talking about a video that I made on updating the Canon R5 firmware, specifically Canon firmware updating. And I used the R5 as the conduit, or essentially featured the R5 as the camera that did it. Now, that's a mirrorless full frame camera, but I had a commenter comment on my video and say that, hey, I updated my lens and my camera, but this didn't work out for me. Now, I always put a little disclaimer in any other videos that I do that are highly sensitive, that could either damage your equipment physically or damage your equipment via software or firmware. Now, one thing you need to understand about the equipment is it's very sensitive to how you update. So the first thing you need to understand is that if at any point in time you go to update any of this stuff and for some reason your battery power goes out or you got the wrong firmware or anything like that, it could brick your camera and or brick your lens. Now, with all that said, this commenter mentioned something about updating a lens and updating the SD card or utilizing the SD card in conjunction with the lens, and somehow it messed up. Now let's listen to the exact words of the commenter and I'll go from there.
I'd like to believe I did everything right, but do I need to update the lens? 55 to 250 millimeters? I don't think the lens update went through successfully. The screen goes black, and I can hear sounds coming from the lens, which has me a bit confused and concerned. It's an EF-S 55 to 250 millimeters. Even before the update, I tried taking a simple photo, but the camera wouldn't capture it. It displayed busy, please wait, and flashed red as if it was struggling to write to the memory card. I've read that this could be a memory card issue, but I've tried multiple SanDisk cards, 32 gigabytes and 128 gigabytes, and I don't think speed is the problem. I even lowered the image quality to reduce file size, but the same issue continues. Any idea what could be causing this?
All right, so my first response would be, when did you experience this issue? And I'm not talking about necessarily when in time, but I'm actually talking about when. Can you experience this with nothing attached to the camera body? No lens, no flash, nothing connected to the camera body, no external monitors, no nothing. And then even take out the SD card, just bare camera body. If you are utilizing the camera and it says busy or something like that, sometimes, and this is very rare, or rare, I've never experienced this, but sometimes you have a broken SD card slot inside of your camera. And when you go to put an SD card in there, it either won't latch or it just does not understand the SD card because the actual physical SD card reader in your camera is broken. Sometimes this is a CF card reader because the CF card has like 88 pins or something like that. And it's easy to bend back one of those pins inside the camera. But I've heard this happening with people who have cameras for a long extended period of time, or a used camera. After they put an SD card in there so many times, it can no longer read the SD card. That might be something you're experiencing. Now, this usually happens when somebody puts the SD card in there and immediately it just starts saying busy, 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 busy. And no matter what SD card you put in there, Lexar, AV Pro, anything, not AV Pro, but it's Angel Bird or any kind of card, it just will not read it. And so that might be actual SD card reader in your camera issue. Now, the next thing is, when does this happen? If it doesn't happen then, when does it happen? Does it happen when you attach the lens? Or is it just SD card centric when you get this busy, buffering-ish kind of red light flashing in the corner, camera reading error? So that's the next thing I would ask. I'm like, hey, when does this actually happen? Because usually what software does or what hardware does is when you start to apply different things, and cameras are modular, so that means you can attach different things to them. SD cards, you can lenses, flashes, all these other things. But to narrow down an issue, you have to do what we call continuity checks. And now you're getting into the pro camera world, the pro photographer world, where we have to be held accountable for what our technology can do and what it can't do, and we have to be able to figure it out. So now you get into pro world where you have to really trace back the things that you do. You also have to understand that once you plug in something or attach something, it'll respond differently to the things that you attach. It'll respond differently to an SD card. If that SD card has information from another camera on it, a Nikon, Pentax, Sony, and it's meant, and you put it inside of a Canon camera, which I'm assuming you have because you said you had a 55 to 250 EF-S lens. If you take that SD card, you put it in that camera and it's formatted for another card, the camera will freak out. If you have files on there that is not designed for that camera to read or format over top of, it'll freak out. So anything wrong with that SD card that has information on it that it shouldn't have, and even if you were updating and it had information that it shouldn't have, you really need to make sure that it's something that the camera can digest and work with its system. So have a clean, clear memory card before you start updating anything. And this might have what gotten you into this situation. Also, another thing is it an official SanDisk SD card? Now, this one's a little bit far out because most of the time when people get an SD card, it's usually working well and it's not necessarily the brand itself, but sometimes the brand is counterfeited. So Western Digital makes SanDisk SD cards. You would have to go to Western Digital and kind of give them a synopsis. They probably have to take a picture of the but the actual serial number and see the condition of it and do different things to figure out whether or not it's the correct or it's a primary card made from Western Digital SanDisk. Because if it's not, then you might be having these issues too, because your camera's kind of freaking out in a certain way and it might be because of that issue. So the next thing I want to talk about is warranty. Now, this is of course another pro photographer kind of thing that we do is go through our warranty. How long do I have a warranty on the card that I purchased? If you bought it off somewhere like Amazon, eBay, or anything like that, they usually have a record of an invoice that said, hey, such and such bought this SD card at this time. Then you can trace it back to Western Digital and say, hey, Western Digital, I bought this SD card through Amazon at this time. Is there any kind of recourse for this SD card? And this is just really to salvage your SD card. And they will send you out another one if they find out that it's an original card and that you bought it within the warranty period. Sometimes you get an extended warranty period, and sometimes you get some backup software that comes with these extended warranty type situations. But most companies, especially Western Digital, Angelbird, all these different companies, they stand by their cards, Lexar and stuff like that. And even if they're not able to recover your software or anything, or recover your memories, if you have any memories or any kind of memory on there, they will return you with a new card that should be working perfectly fine. So that's something to think about, just in case you had something on there that shouldn't have been on there, or corrupted files that the camera can't read or something like that. You can actually get it fixed and they'll give you a card in replacement of that card if you're within that warranty period. So a couple of other things, I never update lenses. I always update the camera body. And usually I think the camera body takes in some lens information with its updates in some cases. For example, you got vignetting and distortion. Vignetting and distortion are two main things that cameras try to correct in camera to ensure that everything works correctly. Now with these new mirrorless cameras, they're actually designing lenses to be corrected because they don't actually reach to the edges of the screen. So you end up getting vignetting and then it corrects it some kind of way with its software. Now with that said, you have a 55 to 250 EF-S lens. This is a DSLR lens from the DSLR days. There's not many updates available on Canon's website for these lenses in general. You have to also understand that this 55 to 250 has a whole bunch of different variants. You have the STM version. You have the old EF-S versions. You probably got 3 of those versions, and you got the STM versions, and then you might have an RF version update in Canon's software. So if you were to download some software from Canon and you got the wrong version 55 to 250, then that might be your issue too. Now, a couple of other things that you can think about doing. See, I'm a little bit more gutsy on this part, but like I said, this is all up to you, your own discretion. Please, please, please use your own discretion. You are responsible for your own gear. But I'll probably just try to download. If I figured out that I downloaded the wrong software, I'll probably just find the right software and just try to re-download it and see if that works. If my camera can latch onto the software. Also, look at your software numbers. look and make sure that your exact lens goes with that exact software. Make sure that your update went from the correct number that it stated on the update. All these things are extremely important. I know in my small firmware video is really a brisk video to try to get everybody to stay on the same page, but also keep their attention and give them a well-informed video. I didn't tell you about these little small things. Make sure the number matches up with the update, or the update matches the update that it says in the firmware update. Because you don't want to be sitting here on 1.5 and then you try to update your software, but your software now says 1.0 after you finish. That sounds like that will be a mess and a half. Check the physicality of your SD card. Make sure your SD card is actually working correctly. You want to make sure that it doesn't have any chips on the side, because sometimes the pins will shift because it's chipped and your camera can't read it just right. And this happens with a lot of UHS-1 SD cards. Those are the cards with one layer of pins going across the top. The UHS-2 cards, which are much faster, and those are the ones that I would recommend for any SD card work, pretty much, it has 2 layers of pins on there. And that's another thing that I would do. I would recommend you, because SD cards aren't that expensive. If you get smaller capacities and slower speeds, just put a different SD card in there. It doesn't have to be the fastest one on the planet, just a different branded one, a Lexar one, a ProGrade one, maybe even a Kingston one. I wouldn't really advise Kingston, but you get the point. Put something different in a different brand there and see if that helps. Also, check your lens, inspect your lens, make sure it's not bent in any kind of way. Make sure that it's zooming correctly. Make sure that the actual focus ring is actually spinning correctly, because if it's tight, or if your zoom is tight, or if your, like I said, your focal length, your focus ring or your zoom ring is tight, you have to understand that if a lens is trying to be operated by the camera, that if a camera puts a signal through a lens and tries to spin it, that becomes an issue if it can't spin it, and it'll give you all types of errors because it might be bent, it might have some gunk in the gears, all these things. So this is reaching out, but make sure your lens is in good condition, make sure your SD is in good condition, and you want to make sure that SD card is formatted for that camera. All these things matter. Chances are, if you have an old 55-250 EF-S lens, it doesn't need to be updated, and I never update lenses. I only update the camera bodies. The only time I've ever updated a Canon lens was a Sigma EF 50mm 1.4 and the 24-70 art lens. And I used the Sigma dock to update that because those were EF-S lenses being converted to a mirrorless body. Also, if you're converting to a mirrorless body, this might be another part of the issue. It's an EF-S lens, so if you have a friend or somebody who has a DSLR, if you're using a mirrorless camera, have them try it on a DSLR or something like that. But another thing is that if it's got bad software on it, it might be a little bit of an issue. But I don't necessarily know how lens updates work, so to speak, because most of the newer software out right now is going to be for the RF lenses. Those RF lenses probably have, updated software, updated ICs that can take that software in directly and is ready to take that software in, unlike those older lenses that just really take the software from the camera and work in tandem with that, with the firmware update. So you got to understand all of these things. You got to make sure that what you're doing is for the betterment of your camera. If you have any more issues, just let me know. And don't hold anything out. If you know you dropped that 55-250, all bets are off the table. If you know you dropped that camera at some point in this process, all bets are off the table. Last ditch effort, like I said, if you've tried everything, you tried different SD cards, hearts at home, and you tried different lenses, but when you put the 55-250 back on there, it still give you that issue, then you need to call Canon. Maybe even KEH is it's a used camera store, but I heard they do good repairs. You have Canon, ask them, you got to send it off and get it fixed if you are that strong about that lens. Me personally, I would just get another lens and wait till I update. 55-250 is not it's not something that you want to stay on forever. If you want to be a great photographer and offer the most amount of light to your camera, you would have to update at some point. I am not advising you to update right now, but think about, because think about those lenses, they are cheaper and they're not what Canon would claim to be their best work. They're just lenses that go well with the kit that you get with your camera, and they get you a lot of distance. They don't let a lot of light in. They don't really help you out to advance your work because you let less light in, especially in sports situations. So those are the things that I would think about doing. Other than that, let me know if you have any other questions. Sorry this video took a long time to come out because I filmed it once. I forgot to turn on my microphone in the right channel or whatever. It was a mess. So now you have it. All right, thank you so much. Continue watching the show. Links in the comments below. You have my affiliate links, all these things. Click on it, support the channel, and stay tuned for the next video.